Jim, when you think of June in schools, what do you think? Or what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Exhale. Exhale is the first thing that comes to mind is exhale and then just taking a moment. I can remember the day when the students and the teachers are gone and the phones aren't ringing.
Yeah.
It's just silence.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the first thing. That's no disrespect. I love having everybody in the building, but every now and then being in the building and it's not a weekend, and it's just exhaling. How about you?
It's funny, I've been a 12-month administrator for quite a while now, and I'll still have friends be like, oh, do you work all year in that school? I'm like, yes, I do. And, they're always saying, oh, that's too bad. I feel sorry for you. Like, hold on a second. No. This is the best time. This is the time that I enjoy it the most because get a chance to just do the work I want to do and get ahead of it. And like you said, phone's not ringing. I don't have people at my door. It's amazing. It's a great time.
It's also a great time for clarity and thinking about what are the next steps. And I think what we have shaken today, talking about the next steps and how do we do some of the things that we want to get accomplished, our two guests here today are going to really help us out with that. That's for sure.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's go on ahead and get to it because people don't want to listen to us ramble on. We want to listen to a couple experts get to this. So let's get rolling.
Welcome to Control+Shift+Lead, recorded in the Forward Ed Network studios, the education leadership podcast for those ready to take action, hosted by Jim Wichman of Inspired Edification and Adam Bush of AWB Education and Media. Leadership isn't a title, it's action. Discover how to take control, drive meaningful change, and lead with purpose right where you are. Take command, drive the shift, lead the way. This is Control+Shift+Lead.
Welcome back to Control+Shift+Lead. Happy June. Happy 1-year anniversary, I believe, of this show. We're pretty darn close to it. Maybe I should have looked that up before I said it, Jim, but we started this adventure a year ago. That's crazy. Does it feel like it's been a year? You've had to put up with me?
Yeah, I don't know if I put up with you, if that's the right way to say that, but it is crazy to think about our first podcast being in Ankeny library and then how it's evolved to where we're at today, going from just sharing knowledge and ideas and tips to school leaders now bringing experts in with some very intentional ways of supporting each other, whether it be helping us control what we can control and shift some thinking maybe and challenge along the way and some tips with that. So I feel very blessed to be partnering with you and then also the impact so far that we've seemed to have had on many educators throughout the country.
But I think what you're just seeing is the fact that there's a lot of people that are out there wanting to help others do this job. This job is not easy. We know it. It takes the right person to do the work that we're all doing. And I don't know an educator out there that's not willing to share a tip or share some part of their secret that's going to help other people get better. And I think that's just a testament to the profession. Well, we do have a couple awesome guests here today. So tell me who we got, who we're going to be talking with today.
So we got two very intelligent young men, Ben Johnson and Bobby Dodd. Two people I've worked with for, known for probably 6 years or so, and got to know them in a couple different venues. And one of the things that I really like about it is these are real people with real ideas and who have walked the talk. What I'm hoping that we get a chance to lean into is a book that they co-authored. Just the concepts that they have with the intentional influence is the title of the book. I should have started with that, but the concept of cultural mapping and just like everything we have of really being intentional with how we work with people, it's all in front of us if we want to lean into it, I guess we should say. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So, hey, Ben, why don't you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just let it over to Bobby.
Yeah, so I currently get to lead by getting my work done through other people who work with other people who work with other people who actually work with kids. So I get to live vicariously through that. And I think that's really what's captured in some of the intentional influence, harnessing that cultural mapping to build commitment is I've got to figure out ways which I can influence other people who are leading other parts of the organization. As I'm currently an assistant soup as practitioner and also do some coaching, speaking, all that along lines of this great work. So it's been pleasure and a little bit of passion work here over the last few years that Bobby and I collaborated on.
So you work with people who work with people who work with people who work with people who work with students. Kind of like a through line is kind of what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, and maybe I added an extra step or so. It depends on how you want to look at it. But I might have been assistant superintendent central office. That's another door you never thought it'd be, right?
Yeah, right. How about you, Bobby Dodd?
I'm in the same role as Ben. I've moved into central office. I'm the director of business services. So I'm kind of working with people that, just like Ben said, to get to work with kids. So, but former high school principal, it's in some different settings. I was in rural, and then I was in suburban, and I was in a very large high school in Ohio. So some really good experiences, but just like Ben said, we get to work with people and build relationships. And the book Intentional Influences, we're really trying to put out the cultural mapping and showing people how important relationships are and how they can build a strong culture. Doesn't matter what type of organization you're in, whether it's a team or a business. So we're pretty excited to talk about it today.
So when I think about that, and we'll get to leaning into that a little bit further, I've worked with schools with 53 districts that are 53 kids in it, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. And I see how this works there. And then remind me again, Bobby, how big was the big high school?
Yeah, it's had 3,700 students in it.
3,700 students in the high school. Is that 912?
Yeah. And probably had total over 200 staff when you get the teachers and all the classified and everyone working there. Yeah.
So that doesn't operate. You can't operate with that because you had like 4 or 5 assistant principals, and you've got, or maybe more, I don't know.
No,
but you've got
that's not many. Yeah.
You have that plus the 200 staff members. And if you don't have a through line of how we're going to operate together and building capacity, well, then you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. And you obviously didn't, because I believe that you were, weren't you the world's principal of the year at one point, or? No, I'm just teasing you a little bit, but you were
the digital principal of the year.
But you were the national digital principal of the year. Is exactly right.
That's why my internet continues to go out during the show.
Yes, it continues to go out during the show. It's probably the bad storm you have there too. I don't know.
No, it's not. It's user errors, you like to say.
Oh, that's awesome. That was awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, guys, I'm really looking forward to what we're going to do here tonight, because we've got an all-star talent crew, just like we usually do here on Control+Shift+Lead. So hang on, listeners. We'll be right back. We'll get ready to get started, as we'll bring you, like usual, something that you can control, something that's going to shift your thinking, and then something that you can use to lead tomorrow. So we'll be right back.
Strong schools don't just happen in classrooms. They happen in conversations. BrightPath Family Connect helps schools and families stay aligned with simple updates, reminders, and meaningful communication that actually gets seen. Because when families are informed, students are supported. BrightPath Family Connect. Better connection, better learning.
School leadership is demanding, and your time is finite. You don't need vague jargon. You need practical strategies that work. Join host Adam Bush every Wednesday morning for your morning boost on the Forward Ed Network. In just a few minutes, you'll get high-impact professional development, moving you from a reactive fixer to a capacity-building coach. Subscribe to your morning boost today.
We're diving into our first framework segment, control. Intentional influence starts with understanding the people around us before we try to move the work forward. Too often we assume that because we communicated something clearly, implementation should simply happen. And I always say clearly communicated. It's only clear if the ones we communicated think it's clear, not that I think it's clear. And I think we kind of messed that up a little bit with but leadership isn't only a communication challenge. It's an influence. So, gentlemen, let's talk. Let's a little practical for our listeners here. What's one tangible action educators can implement right away to better understand the culture and this thing we call influence?
So we really look at this process we've all had those initiatives that have staled out. and it just stalled. And what happened? Like, we've been there before. We thought we had agreement. Everyone nodded, said, yep, we're on board, walked out of the room. And 6 months later, you wake up, it's like, what happened? Right. We've all been there. The reality is that influence needs to be happening behind the scenes, and you can try to mandate compliance, but you have to really build momentum. You have to build that commitment. And so cultural mapping is kind of a process where you just look at who's committed, where are they at on the continuum, whether it's to an initiative, a student experience, or the direction you're trying to align a culture for your school or your organization. And so when you look at who's committed, you look at their relational ties and the influence that people have upon others. So the idea of cultural mapping is you see all these things in snippets, right? Snapshots, but just like a mosaic, they're all separate until you put them together and then a picture starts emerging. So we really believe whether you're a drama teacher, a band director, an athletic coach, or, an administrator or another manager, there's all this invisible professional network that can be harnessed. And it's up to you to be able to put them all together. And once you create that map, you make the invisible visible. And now you have a means where you can start figuring out, where are my entry points? How can I start working for it? And this is established based upon relationships. And, Bobby always talks a lot, so I'll throw it to him a little bit about where he begins when he's trying to build relationships with people.
Yeah, so building off that, just like Ben said, and you start talking about these relationships, you have to figure out a way to meet with people, get to know them. And so we talk a lot about having like 15-minute meetings or making purposeful meetings with everyone on your staff or in your organization or on your team to learn more about them, to figure out who they are, who they can influence, what type of influence they can have, and really just to learn more about them as a person as well, because we all know somebody sees you genuinely trying to build a relationship with them, not a transactional relationship, but a legit relationship, showing that you really care about them. You're going to get a more trusted team member. You're going to get building that trust with each other. And it's really going to start the first block of the first phase of cultural mapping to get you where you want to go from point A to point B. Is you have to build a solid team, but you have to let people know you care about them to build those relationships.
So when I hear what you guys just said there, it really has come down to, I've never heard it talking about taking all those little segments and thinking that is building capacity or building those intentional relationships. It's like you take, what did you say, mosaic art, where you have all these segments, and in isolation, it's just a thing. But when you put all those things together, now you have an image of what's actually happening in your world.
Absolutely. Yep. And you step back and it looks like her. So a lot of people ask me, hey, was this what your dissertation was on, this book? It's like, no, but I wrote my dissertation on classroom walkthroughs and using like electronic, software to collect it. But it's the same idea. It's around now building and leading people, though, because that's what my work now is more so. And honestly, has always been. It's about leading people, whether you're an educator in the classroom or on the athletic field or at a building level or an accounting firm. It's about knowing your people enough. And that's why Bobby and I stress getting to know your people, truly who they are. But then you start to figure out who's really connected to who. And now a picture emerges. And now that you have clarity, you have a map. How can you move forward if you don't have a map of where you currently are and where you want to go?
So we do it kind of blindly, and we think we know what we're talking about. So this slides me right over to what Bobby was talking about. And I want you to touch a little bit clear for your operational definition, Bobby, of transitional relationship versus real. And the reason why I say that, because there's one time in my career where someone said this to me, I didn't get it figured out right away. And I think it's because of transactional relationships. They use the term that for me sometimes that I used to be a facilitator. So I kind of like facilitate it the way I wanted to, manipulate things, not the real. So Bobby, tell me a little bit more about what your operational definitions of a transactional relationship.
Well, I may not be able to give it to you in an operational definition form, but I'll give you some examples, right? So it's, you're walking down the hallway and you're talking with somebody on your staff and, it's, hey, is everything okay? Do you need anything? They say no. And then you keep walking and they keep walking. Okay. Now, if I would ask that, and even when I would be coaching, I would say, well, do you have good relationships with your staff? Like, oh yeah, I see my staff each day. I said, well, did you see this person that we walked by? He's like, well, yeah, I'd count that as as a touch point or, as a meeting with them. I said, all you did was ask them, how's it going? Are they okay? When I'm talking about the difference is the genuine relationships, you're sitting down with people, you're getting to know them, getting to know their family, getting to know a little bit about them, because as Ben was saying, that Mosaic part to it is you have to get to know your people, know your staff in order to utilize the things that they're interested in and the things that they care about. And that's how you're going to connect them with other people on your staff in order to get them to influence others. So that's really what I mean by it. Is a lot of times we'll hear people say, well, yeah, I feel like I have a really good connection with my staff. And then we say back to them, well, do you? Like, do you do these things, like take time out and make it a commitment and make it a part of your day? Or are you talking about relationships that are just kind of transactional, kind of like you were saying, Jim? It's like, it works for me. But then when I ask the person if they feel like somebody cares about them, or if they take a survey in their building, do people care about me? And your results come back, you're like, wow, I didn't realize, 80% of my staff didn't feel like people care about them here. So that's what I mean by the transactional piece.
Well, I've heard you use the word purposeful a little bit ago, and I think that's really what you're talking about there, because everything you're describing right there, there's a purpose behind that, and that purpose could be, long term, but in that moment, it's that I actually do care. This isn't just a transaction. It's not just something that I feel like I should have to do. Otherwise, what else are we going to do? It's awkward if I walk past you in the hallway and we just look and don't say something. But I think that purposeful piece is really key there, that there's some thought behind that, and it's going to serve a better good.
So what I'm knowing, what I know right now is this, because I know Bobby and Ben too. But what is something that takes away all excuses is simply this: I don't have time. Because you got a guy sitting in this panel right now who has time, and he did it in a high school of 3,700. You got another guy who has time, made time, believes in it so much, and he's kind of leading a big portion of what's happening in probably this isn't biggest school district in North Dakota or close to it.
Yeah, right now our largest got about 14,000 kids. So
yeah, I mean, so it's like we take away all excuses, and what I like about the podcast also, Adam, is that people can reach out to Bobby Dodd and Ben Johnson and say, okay, I get it. Now, how do I? They got it. Influence becomes much more intentional when we stop assuming and start understanding. And I think that's really what I got from when Ben introduced himself and he said, work with people. He sees how everything goes together. And then when Ben or Bobby was talking about the genuine part, meaning that it's more than just how the administrator feels. It's actually how the people feel that they're trying to connect to. And I believe the word was genuine. So the more that we are being intentional with the work, the more that we are being genuine and really do care about it, the time is necessary. And so when we get into our next segment, I'm sure we're going to learn a little bit more about that. So we're going to go on a quick break, but when we come back, Adam is going to challenge one of the big assumptions many of us carry into leadership.
This segment is sponsored by Grunmeyer Leader Services. Since 2013, GLS has been a trusted partner for school districts across the Midwest, specializing in executive recruitment and leadership support. They believe that great schools start with great leaders, and they are here to help you find the perfect fit for your district. Transform your school's future with the right leader. Visit GrunmeyerLeaderSearch.com to learn more. Grunmeyer Leader Services, transforming education one leader at a time.
And we are back to Control+Shift+Lead. Gentlemen, it's time for us to get to our shift segment here. And the purpose of this is when we challenge assumptions that help us shape leadership. And folks, today we're taking aim at one that I think quietly shows up, to be honest, in schools every day. And that's the idea that authority just automatically creates momentum. So guys, how do we move from simply getting people to comply toward helping people genuinely commit to what it is we're trying to?
Yeah, I think it's getting back to what you said earlier about being purposeful. And Ben does a really good job talking about this. we try to meet with people and be genuine, as I said earlier, but then also give them that voice. And then that comes with building those relationships. And so in the book, we do talk about different strategies that you can have in order to do that. But it's really getting to know people and showing that you care, but then getting their input as well, because if you want them to be all in and commit to it, they have to feel like that they're valued and that they're listened to. They're not just being told what to do. The leadership, we always see things sometimes, and Ben does a great job of talking about this from the top down, but we don't believe that's the case, especially when you check out intentional influence, you can see how cultural mapping, it's really everyone coming together and not really that top to bottom form of leadership.
When I think about what you kind of said earlier, and I'm going to go back to there's 3,700 students, you have 200 staff. How do you do that? What does that look like?
Well, I mean, it's little things such as, like I said, being purposeful with your meetings. It's being very transparent. So if you're going to collect data from your staff, are you sharing this data back with them, or are you just keeping it? So whenever we collected data, we always shared it back. Ben brought up walkthroughs. We were always sharing back every week the amount of walkthroughs that we did, and then our findings during the walkthroughs, the good things we saw, and then the opportunities for growth. So there's tons of transparency. So no one could, be in the local grocery store or be somewhere else in the community and say, as a staff member, they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what we were doing. They didn't know where we were going. Every one of our staff meetings, we always talked about how we're going to go from point A to point B. We did different things like raised monies for different charities. The staff would choose a charity each month. We would raise money during the staff meeting. And then I would tell them how much we collected, and we would send it to the organization. Organization obviously would reach back out to us. Mm-hmm. So we would total up, it's like, guys, you realize we've raised over $11,000 this year for different charities in Southwest Ohio. It's little things like that it's kind of out of the norm a little bit, but it's very purposeful, as I keep going back to saying. And so, I'll let them jump in, but when you do those things, you start building your culture, and then you can also map a little bit and see where the people are who are changing, right? Maybe you got some people that you didn't think could be a positive influence in your building, but all of a sudden they're starting to swing now because someone's listening to them. Someone's feels like they're caring about them. Ben has a great story in the book as well about, there's some teachers, and he worked with one that, nobody had really listened to him. And all of a sudden they started listening to him. They offered a class that he wanted to teach for years. And all of a sudden he went from somebody that wasn't helping the culture all to being an influencer. So just, again, I keep saying it, but it's purposeful, and it's these little things that you can do that can build that intentional influence throughout the building and an organization.
That's great.
Yeah. Jim and Adam, Bobby and I would kind of push forward that it's not just about you. Like, what you have to do is creating the conditions, right? So I like analogies, ecosystems, agriculture, you got to cultivate it, right? So the conditions, when we talk about professional capital, you're talking about human capital. Everyone's got expertise. They've got talents. They've got, their own abilities. And then that social capital, who trusts who? Like, we believe very much so that trust is the currency of a culture, right? So if, I had a 35-year veteran teacher who stood up, she had not only formal authority, but she had social influence and authority. And she's like, this is the best professional development I have ever been part of. I had 50% of my staff sign up the next day to voluntarily be part of this professional development the next year, because through that social capital, through that human capital, and then giving them decisional capital, what can you make? What decisions can you make? That all kind of gets blended in this professional capital that can be harnessed. And so we harness it by connecting and seeing the dots. Who's connected to who? So where are my entry points? If I want to move it, I'm going to build capacity in John, because John's roommates with Randy, who they, in college, and even though they're in different departments, they actually influence each other.
Yeah.
Sarah goes to Margarita Fridays, and if we get to her, man, we can get the group going. So you become like an engineer of it's like almost like a GM, right? Who you drafting, who you going to build up talent. And now you're starting these kind of little fires throughout the force that can start affecting and have chain reactions. So instead of you just seeing top down, your org chart's a lie. Let me tell you, gentlemen, flip it, throw it there, crumple it up. It's a 3-dimensional spider web of connections, relational connections, trust. But then seeing who's committed, that's showing you where you got these pockets that can be, further enhanced and helping to connect people. Sometimes you got that lone person. They're awesome. They're on board, but they're an art teacher, not connected to anyone. So how are you going to learn that?
Yeah.
How to know your people. And those are those conversations Bobby talks about. I learned that, Bill likes to mountain bike on the weekends, and so does Sean. But do I know those things in isolation? Because we've coached, executive coaching. We've worked with other people. We come in, we do this map, and we start asking them, what do you know? And some people didn't, as a team of 8, they didn't know 3 personal things about each staff member. I don't say that from a blame game. They were in survival.
Yeah.
But their job was to be intentional about learning so that they could fill out the board. And by doing that, now we start to make connections. Because Bobby and I talked about this recently. I believe it was Gallup did a poll. And they said, if you like your boss, which is up to you, whoever you lead, whether you're a teacher in the classroom, then you're the boss of the kids, right? See that. And you have one friend at work. You have 95% retention. So our job is to create the conditions and cultivate the conditions where people are connected and that you can do something about it. It's not passive. That's why Bobby was talking about you take a snapshot and then 6 months later, you might do it again. So here in June and summer might be thinking about who's on board. Maybe someone retired. Maybe someone's coming in. Where do you think they are? Your dynamics are going to shift because it's a living ecosystem, your culture. So you got to figure out where are people and now where's my opportunities to further harness that influence that's already going because your peers influence each other. And so we can get into more of that or just take a look in the book. But again, you just look at how you might harness that energy that's already positive. And then also you have to protect people from those pockets of negativity and toxic that do exist. And then you as a leader have a responsibility to address it.
Wow.
But I mean, guys, think about this. For years in education with leadership, that has been the case. That is something that should have taken place. But people look at it, right? Like Jim, I could look at it leading a large organization, and I think to myself, where do I start? Well, I can't do this because it's just too many people. That's the beauty of the book is the book provides you with a plan, a framework to do it. That's not out there. That's never been done before. That's why when I first saw it, Ben showed it to me, that framework to build culture, it's something it gives people, especially young administrators.
You can't lead what you don't see, Bobby. That's what we talk about. You can't lead what you don't see, right?
Yes. Like that podcast we did, and they asked us about how about a young administrator? Like, wait a second, young administrator, that's the best thing because the first thing to do, you're going to come in and we say, just meet with your people. Just get to know. Like, what do you mean? No.
Everybody talks about relationships. That's a great place to start.
Yeah. And times people think, well, that seems too easy. Exactly. That's the place you got to start.
So here's what I say about this. So when Ben drew the culture map out for me, it was in colors and it was on a whiteboard. So Ben talks about the org chart, and you can see it's like 2-dimensional. It's flow down, flow up, whatever way you want to do it. Well, what I pictured today for the first time is how you said it is. You're talking about a 2D to a 3D kind of map.
Like an atom, like a chemistry.
It is like an atom. I could see that now the way you say that and how it's all tied together. And then I go back to what we're talking about with the control is, first of all, we can control if we're going to get to know people or not. We can control if we're going to make it a priority. I think in break, Bobby, you were talking about you lock in and you protect your administrative assistant is a big player in how this whole cultural mapping happens and building relationships and genuine because you had would you say you locked down and find me? That's my meeting.
There was no choice. Like these things always had to happen. It's like you're saying, my assistants, they knew the same thing. And then they start doing things with it as well. And it's kind of, it starts spiraling in a great direction.
You model what you want others to replicate.
Yep.
That's so you did with the APs. APs do with department chairs or grade level teams. You want all teachers to be doing that in their classroom as well.
Hey, Adam, I think we got our T-shirt. I think we got our T-shirt as well.
We do. I'll tell you what, I was just talking about that. I have something. I had to go find this real quick here. And so, listeners, if you're not watching, you'll be able to see this. This is what your org chart reminded me of, right? We've all seen this little icon here of the birds crapping down on every bird down below, right? That's what it ends up being if you're not intentional about what you're talking about and to be able to do that big map instead. Otherwise, you end up with that. That's really what your org chart ends up being.
If you're not intentional with it, you're right.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
The T-shirt I have, we always come up, someone's going to say something, drop some knowledge that's like worth a T-shirt worthy. And I can't remember which one. I think it was Ben who said, trust is the currency of culture. Trust is the currency of culture that Ben dropped out there.
Yep.
And if we just sit with that, if we got nothing else out of this podcast, lean into that. These two guys are reminding us that we have to be intentional with building that trust. And then you got to be intentional with everything else we're talking about by building the social mapping and getting to know people. And then the other thing I would talk about, we started talking about a little bit, and this is how you get it moved. This is how you get people to shake along the way. Actually, it's also how you get people to stay in the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we don't have a retention problem. We have an attrition problem in education right now.
We don't have a retention problem. We have an attrition problem.
Yeah. Yep. And conditions where people are connected, they have peers, they feel like they belong, and the culture, it's aligned. That's your job as a leader, create the conditions where they have that social capital, the professional they're learning from. They're not islands. They're not on islands by themselves, whether it's islands of excellence or just feeling like you're disconnected. We want them to feel that sense of community, be seen. I'm seen, I'm known. I'm known in my community where I spend more week hours than you do with your own family members. That's the reality.
Move from managing people to helping people find that meaning. I mean, that's really what you're talking about there. It's going to change everything completely. Well, that's awesome, guys. That's a great shift segment. We've got one more coming up when we get to our lead segment. We'll do that right after the break, and Jim's going to bring us back into some more practical leadership. Hang on, listeners. Be right back with our last segment.
There's a moment every educator knows, when the to-do list gets longer than the school day. That's where ClassBridge AI comes in. Turn ideas into lesson materials, activities, and classroom resources in minutes, so you can spend less time building and more time teaching. ClassBridge AI. Work smarter in the classroom.
For students wondering what comes next and how to get there, there's Next Step Scholar, a platform that helps learners explore careers, build direction, and take meaningful steps toward their future. Not overwhelming, just clearer paths forward. Next Step Scholar. Every future starts with a next step.
Welcome back to our final segment, Lead. We've looked at culture, we've challenged assumptions, and now it's time to put our influence into action. Great leadership isn't just about what happens at the front of the room. It often starts long before meetings ever begin. And I think our two guests have really kind of articulated it. It isn't just the one snapshot. It's about being intentional with the small things. It's not about getting everybody together and saying, here's what we're going to do. It's about noticing in the people. And Bobby said this numerous times, is they gotta truly feel your genuine value, that they do value along the way. When we're talking about leaders, whether they be new to the profession, been there for 15, 20, 25 years, what leadership practice would you encourage educators to adopt if they want to lead through intentional influence?
Yeah, Jim, I really think that this comes down to a theme that we've been talking about. The through line is relationships are the foundation of influence. You have to be able to invest time, but you need clarity too. And so we talk about the idea of spheres of influence. And the first sphere is, and really at the core, is understanding yourself and leading oneself. If you aren't clear on these are my core values, what I believe, who I am, and what we're going to stand for, you can't expect others to follow. Well, once you have that clarity, then it's really about aligning others and figure out who's aligned, that you have evidence that they're aligned in terms of a continuum of commitment, who's committed, who's nearly committed, who's compliant, maybe who's disengaged, who are those resistors. And then you have to think about there's different ways to cultivate that commitment by investing time in the one-on-one relationships. It might be connecting others with peers, or it might be getting to know the origin stories of those that have become disengaged or just compliant. Like, why did they get into this? Where did they lose their way? I had a teacher that, had an amazing idea, and he came to me with that old ditto paper, right? Is that purple? It still smell. And he said, this was in like 2008, I think. And he was like, so, I mean, it's from the 80s. He's like, so I'm willing to waste my excitement one last time. I've been seeing what you're doing. And he said, so here's an idea that I have about film to lit. I'd love to be able to teach this class because the kids don't care about Beowulf. But you know what? The Canterbury Tales. But you know what? Through film to lit, I really could make them. And I've seen it. So we talked about that. And for the first time, Larry, heard yes. He heard a resounding yes, right? So then all of a sudden, his origin story, it wasn't that he was disengaged. He'd been told no, and beaten down. So when you get to know your people, how you deal with Larry is different than you deal with, Paul, who's all on board, who's committed and lined up. Again, you have to meet people where they are, again, through the relationships, as Bobby talked about, those one-on-ones. So what you do then, that's also through the cultural mapping, because you have to visualize the professional network in order to figure out how you're going to harness that influence. And then you can drill, now that you have the map, you can think about, okay, let's lead the organization through the teams, right? And then out that by specifically, whether it's like a grade level team, a department team, or thinking a manager world, or in athletics, it might be your defensive line. You got to think about who's on board, who's connected, who holds sway. How do I get that? It might be your tenors or sopranos, or figure out, whatever organization or activity you're connected to. It cascades then on spiderwebs out through the relationships to others. And then when you can talk about, you create these cascades and they're self-reinforcing, right? It becomes this idea of this trophic cascade that we talk about, connection with the wolves. It's just this idea that you just be you, and you're engaged in this, and naturally now you're going to have these effects on others. So that's really where we end up seeing that opportunity, is that you don't have to just sit back and be like, this is happening to me, but locus of control really falls back to you. You can build the culture that you desire, not the one you merely want, but you have to take steps and be intentional about it.
Yeah. And I hear people, it kind of goes back to what you said at the beginning in the control segment too. And we hear sometimes the poor me's that come into play. Really respect and appreciate how it goes. Start with yourself, your vision, everything. And also Larry, poor Larry. Look what happened. We had a lot of good ideas we missed because no one said yes.
Because no one said yes. No one was willing to listen to Larry. Bobby, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, I like what Ben said, and it makes me think about resistors. And as an administrator, especially when you come into a new organization, you hear a lot like, oh boy, good luck working with so-and-so, right? And then your initial reaction is always, I'm going to steer clear of that person, and I'm going to go and find what I'm comfortable with, makes me feel good, is all my influencers. The great part about cultural mapping is now you actually have a plan and a framework to work with resistors and get them to be an influencer in a positive way. I don't think before we could ever say that in education or in organizations. I think it's like I said, you really you didn't want them to be a part of a cascade that could bring anything down that you were running to start or try to get started. But now with cultural mapping, you have a lot of ways to be able to work with resistors and try to get them back on board. And like Ben said, help them find their way. And especially working with young administrators, it's great to, because they come in, they just don't know what they don't know. But if you tell them, like, no, sit down with them, work with them, see why they got into this profession or why they joined this team or why they joined this organization, there are ways to get them back to that place where they started.
Yeah, to that point, if I might add, I was recently doing a presentation and I asked the crowd to think about their direct reports, like thinking about 6 to 8 people. Again, in organizations, sometimes it's far more than that, right? But some of these are central office folks. I said, do you know the origin stories of each of the people that report to you? I said, you don't need to answer that. But the reality, by the looks on the face, a lot of them might know 2 or 3. They don't know why everyone got into the business or why they were leading, why they chose to say yes to being an educator. So again, no matter what you're in, you got to know your people in order to lead your people.
Got to know your people to lead your people.
We're running out of t-shirt room, Jim.
Yeah, Ben, I'll drop dimes on you all day if you let him.
That's what I'm here for.
The thinker, the processor, and yet the t-shirt. maker. Influence is not what happens after the plan is built, is what I'm hearing from you guys over and over again. Influence is not what happens after the plan is built. Influence is how the plan becomes real. And I think of the 3 segments we've had so far, it's kind of like nails it down right there. Influence is how the plan becomes real. I appreciate you guys being here. We're going to come back and recap everything that we've talked about, which I don't have sure how we're going to do that, Adam. But we're going to try to come and summarize each of the segments that these 2 dropped in. One of the things that we're going to touch base on too when we come back is you've used this term executive coaching. So I guess when we come back from our break, I'd like to spend just a couple of minutes just talking about what does that actually mean? And then how do we get a hold of our guests here so maybe they can kind of reach out? Because June is a great time to just touch base. It's a little slower pace, like we said at the beginning. It's a great time to connect with these 2 people to just really think about this 3-dimensional concept map that the cultural map is what I look at it as, and because that's what it is, and see how do we start? What does that segment look like? What does that look like? And how do we get a hold of these 2? So we'll come back right after this little short break.
You're doing incredible work in your classroom and community. Isn't it time the world heard about it? Welcome to The Commons, a dedicated podcast channel on the Forward Ed Network, built specifically for educational professionals like you. We provide the platform at no cost. You bring the ideas and the passion. We provide the reach to share them with the field. Ready to start your broadcast? Ready to share your knowledge with others? Email us at admin@forwardednetwork.com and join the conversation today.
Hi, listeners. Welcome back to Control+Shift+Lead. Jim, I don't know how you're going to do this, but we do need to do a recap so everybody knows what we've talked about. And we don't, we try to keep this show under an hour, so we don't want to drop these nuggets all day again, because we certainly have a lot of them today. So can you do what you can do and try to wrap that up? What did we learn today, Control+Shift?
What I would learn today more than anything else is to reach out to Bobby Dodd and Ben Johnson, because they're going to help you walk through with you how to really look at your staff through the lens of being meaningful, manageable, and having genuine results of how you get to know the people, the origin stories that come up, and helping people feel valued. But I'm going to try to grab a couple segments or try a little snapshots of each one. So under control, So I don't know if this is the best way, but we're going to lean into momentum isn't something you wait for. It's something you build. So you have to be intentional, and it doesn't start with a big picture or anything. It starts with getting to know the people and then building the picture. And I think something else that Ben brought up was it's like a mosaic art. You take these segments, these little relationships, you put them together, then you can see the big relationship, the big image about your system and your culture that you have there. Under shift, the one that really kind of stuck with me is trust is the currency of culture. And if you sit with that longer than 3 seconds, you'll know what these guys were talking about, what these guys have invested in. These guys as just actual practitioners and authors, they've leaned into it and they have something, and it's something that's not a program. It's a concept. It's a pedagogy. It's about how you look through the lens of the system where we are humans working with other humans who are working with the brains of younger humans. So it's trust is the currency of culture, and how that works with the staff and how that works with your community and your parents as well. And then finally, influence is how the plan becomes real. So it doesn't just magically happen. We have to be intentional with it. And the gentleman also our guests talk about how it starts with yourself and how you want to believe and where you want to put your time and energy into it. Gentlemen, I got to tell you, thank you so much. Can you just give us a little snapshot when you talked about executive coaching? What does that look like? I mean, when we're talking about executive coaching.
Yeah, I think the reality is this can take different formats. We do some workshops. If you're a superintendent, want to have work with your cabinet or your principals, we can do training that way. As we have, we also can come in and just work with a principal and maybe their administrative team or the instructional coaches, leadership, and really just try to figure out what is the current reality, where is our map. And once you have a base of where people are, who's connected to who has influence through those relational ties. Now you have a game plan of where your current reality is, and now you have to be intentional about walking through, and sometimes we can see that invisible and be like, man, where's your leadership team? Where's the opportunity for entry points? Who can you harness and build capacity so they can help influence? And so that really ends up being a lot of the reflective and the planning process that goes after you get that initial map built.
So what I heard there more than anything else is that you are people who don't tell other administrators or teams or whatever how to do it. You're more than willing to sit there and walk with them in the coaching, not just telling them how to do it.
Yeah. I think the best learning is when you actually create your own map and go through that process, especially if you can do it with at least one or two other people. It's the conversation. And so what I've found is that my role as that executive kind of coach is to be asking those questions, prompting, digging, and then helping them to see it in different, or asking just good reflective questions, because it causes them to see the patterns, see the forest through the trees. Because again, they see the mosaic, they see the tiles, but they don't see the mosaic picture. And so that's, I think, the value add that we come pulling up next to you and being able to sit in a conference room, put a whiteboard or chart paper and actually start to create your own map so they have a reality of where's my map? Where am I beginning this next school year? Where might I be able to be intentional about leveraging that time that's precious into building capacity, or seeing who I can shift, because that rising tide is going to lift all boats, and that's going to help create those cascades into other parts of your organization.
A phone call, a tweet, a text is definitely well worth your time and energy. If you're listening, you want to reach out and just think about some things different. Hey, gentlemen, tell us what is the best way to get a hold of you?
How do people get a hold of you? Because you're just touching the surface, I can tell, of the knowledge that you've got to share.
Yeah. So we have a website, cascadingsolutions.org. My Twitter, Instagram, Facebook is kind of that Dr._Ben Johnson, and then Instagram, Facebook, Dr._Ben Johnson 80 for that. And then really I use LinkedIn professionally a lot right now. And so LinkedIn / Dr. Ben Johnson 80, cursed with a common name. So that's how you can get a hold of me, Bobby.
Yeah, I'm the same way. My Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, X, it's Bobby _Dodd. And then we've really been using LinkedIn a lot, to be honest with you. So mine's Bobby Dodd 13 for LinkedIn.
And I also have my cell phone out there that's associated with this, 701-955-033, and you'll get me. And again, that's out there. We'd love to have that conversation, see how we might be able to help.
Well, I know we talked about it a little bit here, but your guys' book is out there as well. I see that's also on Amazon, correct, right?
Yep, it's Reconnected Ed, yeah, and then Amazon.
Yeah, and also out there on Amazon too, folks. So it's a great book. Get out there and get that. Get in touch with these guys. Jim, it's been a great set of guests here tonight. This has been fun. Thanks for bringing you guys on. Bobby, Ben, really appreciate you guys coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it, sir.
Yeah, we've enjoyed it.
All right, guys. Say thanks a lot. Stay safe and enjoy June, whatever that brings for you guys.
Thanks, listeners. Be back again next month with more on Control+Shift+Lead. Keep doing that hard work. Keep doing the work that only a few are qualified enough to do. We really appreciate the fact that you're one of the few. So thank you. You know you matter. We'll talk to you again next month.
Thanks for hanging out with us today on Control+Shift+Lead. If you enjoyed the show, there's plenty more to discover in the show notes, including ways to connect with Jim and Adam, or even launch your own educational podcast. While you're there, take a look at the other amazing shows on the Forward Ed Network. They're doing incredible work sharing the stories of educators everywhere. We'll see you next month. Now, go out and control, shift, and lead your school.